I thought my dad was a nobody. So why did a four-star general just salute him like he was royalty? That moment didn't make sense. Not then. Not even a few seconds after it happened. I remember standing there in full Navy dress uniform, shoulders squared, trying to look composed like I always do. That's what training teaches you. Control, discipline, presence. But inside? Inside, I was completely thrown off. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. Let me take you back. My name is Ashley Maya, 32, Lieutenant Commander in the U.S. Navy. I've spent over a decade building my career, earning respect the hard way. Every promotion, every mission, every sleepless deployment, it was mine. I was proud of that. But my dad? Robert Maya, 60, quiet, reserved, the kind of man who fixes things around the house without being asked, the kind who listens more than he speaks. If you asked me a week ago what he did in the Navy, I would have said, "Oh, he served. Nothing crazy." No war stories, no medals on display, no bragging, nothing. So why was I here? This ceremony wasn't just any event. It was a high-level military recognition gathering. Retired officers, decorated veterans, even senior command. And somehow, my dad had been invited as a guest of honor. That alone felt off. I remember leaning toward him before we walked in. "Dad, what exactly is this for?" I asked quietly. He just smiled. That same calm, unreadable smile. "You'll see," he said. That was it. No explanation. And now, here I was, standing in a room filled with people who had seen things I could only imagine, watching a four-star general, Admiral Jonathan Hayes, completely stop mid-step. His eyes locked onto something across the room. A photograph. My dad's photograph. Everything slowed down. The conversations faded. The movement stopped. Even the air felt heavier. And then, the Admiral raised his hand and saluted. Not casually, not politely, but with a level of respect I had only ever seen reserved for the highest-ranking heroes. My heart started pounding. What is going on? I turned to my dad. He didn't react, didn't move, didn't say a word. That's when I realized something chilling. Everyone else in the room was starting to notice too, and whatever truth was about to come out, I wasn't ready for it. The room didn't just quiet down, it shifted. Have you ever felt that? That moment when something changes, and you don't understand why, but you know it matters? That's exactly what hit me. 1 second, it was a normal ceremony, conversations, laughter, glasses clinking, the usual mix of pride and nostalgia you get when veterans gather. The next? Silence. Not complete silence, but that low, tense quiet where people start whispering instead of talking, where heads turn, where eyes lock onto something, or someone. My dad. I looked around, trying to make sense of it. A group of older veterans near the back were staring, really staring, at him. One of them nudged the other, whispering something I couldn't hear. Another man, probably in his 70s, slowly stood up straighter, almost instinctively, like he was recognizing someone important. But how? I leaned closer to my dad. "Do you know him?" I asked, nodding toward Admiral Hayes. He didn't even look. "No," he said calmly. Too calmly. That didn't sit right, because at that exact moment, Admiral Hayes was still standing across the room, eyes locked on my dad's photo like he'd just seen a ghost. And then something else happened. A younger officer walked up beside the Admiral, clearly confused. I could see him asking a question, his expression uncertain, almost cautious. The Admiral didn't answer right away. Instead, he took a slow step forward, then another, each step deliberate, focused. The room parted slightly as he moved, like people didn't even realize they were making space for him, and suddenly, I felt it. That strange, creeping realization that maybe, just maybe, I didn't know my father at all. Because this wasn't normal recognition. This wasn't polite respect. This was something deeper, something heavier. I glanced back at my dad again, still calm, still quiet, hands folded behind his back like this was just another day. But there was something different now, something subtle. His jaw was tighter, his eyes distant, like he already knew what was coming. That's when the whispers got louder. Fragments started reaching me. That can't be him. I thought he was classified. He disappeared after that operation. My stomach dropped. Classified? Operation? Disappeared? What were they talking about? I turned back just in time to see Admiral Hayes stop a few feet from the photograph. He didn't speak, didn't move, just stared. Then slowly, he leaned toward a nearby officer and said something under his breath. I couldn't hear all of it, but I caught enough. Operation Silent Dawn. My pulse spiked. I looked at my dad, really looked this time, and for the first time in my life, I wasn't seeing the man who raised me. I was seeing a stranger. And I had a feeling that whatever Silent Dawn was, it was about to change everything. My dad, a classified operation? No, that doesn't make sense. Except, it did. Because the way Admiral Hayes was looking at that photograph, it wasn't confusion. It wasn't curiosity. It was recognition. And not just recognition, respect. The kind you don't fake. The kind you earn. I felt my chest tighten as the Admiral finally moved again, stepping closer, closer to us this time. Conversations had completely died out now. Every eye in the room followed him, including mine. He stopped just a few feet away from me, from my dad. For a moment, no one spoke. Then his eyes shifted from the photograph to me. "You're his daughter," he said. Not a question, a statement. I swallowed. "Yes, sir." His gaze sharpened slightly, studying me like he was connecting pieces of something bigger. Then, slowly, he nodded. "You serve?" "Yes, sir, Lieutenant Commander." Something flickered in his expression. Approval. Maybe even recognition? But then he looked past me, at my dad, and everything changed. His posture straightened even more, if that was even possible, and without hesitation, he raised his hand again and saluted. This time, not to the photograph, to the man standing right in front of him. The room froze, completely. No whispers now, no movement, just silence. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. My dad didn't immediately return the salute. He just looked at the Admiral, calm, steady, almost reluctant. Then, after a brief pause, he lifted his hand and returned it. Sharp, precise, controlled, like muscle memory that never left. And that's when Admiral Hayes spoke again. Low voice, measured, but loud enough for the people closest to hear. "Sir, I never thought I'd see you again." Sir! He called my dad sir! I felt the ground shift beneath me. This didn't line up with anything I knew. Not his rank, not his history, not the quiet life he lived after retirement. Nothing. I stepped closer, barely able to process what I was witnessing. "Dad, what is he talking about?" I asked, my voice quieter than I expected. He didn't answer, didn't even look at me. His eyes were locked on the Admiral, and for the first time, I saw something in them I had never seen before. Weight. History. Maybe even guilt? The Admiral took a slow breath, then glanced around the room, as if realizing just how many people were watching. But it didn't stop him. "If it wasn't for you," he continued, voice steady, "Operation Silent Dawn would have failed. Hundreds wouldn't have made it home." A ripple moved through the crowd. You could feel it. Shock spreading. Confusion turning into realization. And me? I felt like I couldn't breathe. Hundreds? I turned to my dad again. This time, there was no denying it. He wasn't just some quiet Navy veteran. He was something else entirely. Something bigger. The Admiral leaned slightly closer to me then, his voice dropping just enough that only I could hear the next part. "You deserve to know who your father really is." My heart stopped, because in that moment, I realized I was about to hear a story my dad had hidden my entire life, and I wasn't sure I was ready for it. My entire life was built on a version of my dad that wasn't real. Or maybe it was real, just incomplete. I stood there, barely able to process what Admiral Hayes had just said. The room wasn't loud, but it wasn't silent either. It was filled with something else now. Tension, expectation. People weren't just watching anymore. They were waiting for answers. And so was I. "Sir," the Admiral said again, this time addressing my dad more formally. "With your permission, I think it's time." "Time for what?" I turned sharply toward my father. "Time for what?" I asked, my voice tighter now. This wasn't confusion anymore. This was urgency. My dad exhaled slowly. For a moment, I thought he might refuse. Walk away. Keep everything buried like he always had. But then, he nodded. One small movement. That was all it took. The Admiral straightened and addressed the room. "You all know about Operation Silent Dawn," he began. And just like that, every veteran in the room went still. Some stood straighter. Others lowered their heads slightly. Respect. Heavy, undeniable respect. It was one of the most classified and high-risk extraction missions in modern naval history, he continued. A situation where multiple units were trapped, surrounded, with no clear way out. My pulse quickened. I had studied missions like that, but never this one. Never this name. The Admiral turned slightly, gesturing toward my dad. "What most of you don't know is who led the operation when everything went wrong." A pause. A long one. Then, him. It hit the room like a shockwave. I felt it physically. A few people gasped. Others just stared, frozen, trying to reconcile what they were hearing. "No," someone whispered behind me. "That's not possible." But it was. The Admiral continued, his voice steady but carrying weight now. "When communication broke down, when command structures collapsed, when evacuation seemed impossible, he made a decision." I couldn't look away from my dad. "He stayed behind," the Admiral said, "coordinated the extraction manually, redirected enemy attention, bought time." My chest tightened. Bought time? "At the cost of his own extraction window," Hayes added quietly. That's when it clicked. That's why no one talked about him. That's why he disappeared. He wasn't just part of the mission. He was the reason others survived. "And then?" I whispered, barely aware I'd spoken. The Admiral looked at me. "Then he vanished from official records," he said. "Requested full anonymity. No recognition. No honors. Nothing." I felt something crack inside me. All those years, all those quiet dinners, all those moments where I thought he had nothing to say. He was carrying this? I turned to him, my voice shaking now. "Why?" I asked. "Why wouldn't you tell me?" For the first time since this started, he looked at me. Really looked. And there was something in his expression I couldn't ignore. Not pride, not regret. Something deeper. "I didn't do it for recognition," he said simply. But I knew that wasn't the whole story. Because the way the room was reacting, the way people were standing now, some unconsciously at attention, the way the Admiral hadn't lowered his respect for even a second, there was still something more, something bigger, and I had a feeling. The final truth hadn't even been revealed yet. What else could there possibly be? That was the question running through my mind as I stood there, heart racing, trying to absorb everything I had just heard. My father, the quiet man I grew up with, had led one of the most critical missions in naval history. He saved hundreds, and chose to disappear from the story. That alone should have been everything. But it wasn't, because Admiral Hayes wasn't done. He turned back to the room, his voice shifting, firmer now, more official. "There's a reason his name was removed from the record," he said, "and it wasn't just his request." A ripple of confusion moved through the crowd. I felt it too. "What do you mean?" I asked, my voice cutting through the silence. The Admiral looked at me, then at my father, almost as if asking permission one last time. My dad didn't speak, but this time he didn't stop him either. So Hayes continued. "After the mission," he said, "there was an internal investigation. Command believed the operation had gone off protocol, that the decision to stay behind violated direct orders." My stomach dropped. Of course, there it was, the cost. "He was facing disciplinary action," Hayes added. "Potential court-martial." The room shifted again, but this time it wasn't just awe, it was tension. "He accepted it," the Admiral continued, "didn't defend himself, didn't reveal what really happened in those final hours." I stared at my dad. You almost got court-martialed?" I asked, stunned. He nodded once. Calm, like it was nothing. "But the truth came out," Hayes said firmly, "and that's when everything locked into place. The survivors," he continued, "the officers he saved, they testified. Every single one. They made it clear, without him, they wouldn't be standing here." A few of the older veterans in the room straightened at that. Some even nodded. "They overruled the charges," Hayes said. "Not only cleared him, but classified the entire operation to protect its strategic impact." Silence. Heavy. Complete. "And he still walked away," the Admiral added quietly. "Chose a life without recognition, without rank advancement, without acknowledgement." I felt my eyes sting. Not from sadness, from something stronger. Respect. Deep, overwhelming respect. I turned fully toward my dad. "All this time," I said softly, "you just lived like none of it happened?" He gave a small shrug. "People made it home," he said. "That's what mattered." That was it. No speech, no pride, just truth. And somehow, that hit harder than everything else. The room slowly shifted again, but this time, people weren't whispering. They were moving. One by one, veterans stood straighter. Then another, and another, until nearly half the room was standing at attention. Not ordered, not commanded, chosen. Admiral Hayes raised his hand one final time, and this time, dozens followed. A room full of men and women who understood exactly what it meant, saluting my father. I felt something settle inside me, something clear. I had spent my entire life trying to become a great officer, but now I understood where that drive came from. It wasn't just me, it was him. Later that night, as the ceremony ended and the room slowly returned to normal, I walked beside him in silence. No cameras, no attention, just us. "I wish I had known sooner," I admitted. He glanced at me, a faint smile on his face. "You found out when you were supposed to," he said. And for the first time, that felt true. I looked at him, not as just my dad anymore, but as the man he really was. And I realized something I would carry for the rest of my life. I thought my dad was a nobody, but he was the reason so many people got to go home. And now, so would I.